You're listening to Psych with Mike, and the most important way to support the show is to find us on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. So no matter how you listen to Psych with Mike, find us on YouTube, smash the subscribe button, and we really appreciate it. Now, here's Psych with Mike. Welcome into the Psych with Mike and Brett Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan.
And I'm Brett Newcomb. How are you?
Normal.
You wish.
I wish.
Yeah.
Or neurotypical, as we are want to say nowadays.
We don't say
Well,
that.
we don't.
You
Yes,
say
because
that.
I use the royal
Oh.
we and.
My wife gets on my nerves. She's not neurotypical. Oh, okay.
There are so
Of
many
course, I haven't
things.
actually heard you say that. I've just heard you imply that.
Yeah, there's so many things now that you're prohibited or encouraged not to use in polite conversation. When I go to class and I teach, there's
You look out
sometimes.
at the students in your graduate class and you go, God, you guys are not neurotypical at all, are you?
Oh, I don't say that.
And then they look at each other like, what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah. But I have been told, oh, you can't use that word anymore. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is a word we've been using in psychology for 50 years, and
Yeah.
you can't say those things.
But then
anymore.
you remember when queer was a diagnosis.
Man, I do remember that. Yeah.
Not just a word that meant strange.
Right.
Or different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the lesson to be learned from that is that we are old.
The world moves on.
The world moves on.
And we don't.
And we,
Yeah.
like Roland the Gunslinger from the old Stephen King book, the world moves on.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is a question that I have and that I'm actually, I want to say struggling with. That might be hyperbolic, but have we returned to normal after the pandemic, or are we finding a new normal, or are things still in flux? And I don't know. There are parts of the world that I see that I think, oh, we've returned to normal. There are other parts I say, oh, that'll never be the same. And then there are other parts where I say, I don't think we've even gotten to the point where we can say we're ready to return to normal. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think about it.
Okay.
I don't, man. I'm just busy living my life. I don't think those deep thoughts like you do. I mean, I've been known to look at somebody and go, God, is that normal?
Mm-hmm.
The way he's behaving, the way he's talking.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, I mean, when I do that, very specifically in that situation, is that dangerous to me? Is that entertaining to me? Is that
Mm-hmm.
going to cause me a problem in some way? Is he driving normally? Or is he a threat to the environment? The global question of is the stock market back where it should be? Is the employment record up where it should be? How many people are getting vaccinated in this state? How many maternal deaths do we have? How many infant deaths do we have? What's normal compared to 3 or 5 or 10 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Those are for statisticians and politicians.
Which is the article that I sent you was obviously conducted by statisticians. It was conducted by Gallup, and their findings were that 59% of individuals in the United States believe the pandemic is over, which obviously means that 31% say that it's not. Is that right?
You're the math person.
No, I'm not. I don't think that's right.
No,
No, it's
be closer to
41%. 41% of people don't believe that it is, and so that's amazing to me.
51-49.
But-
Okay, so what's the difference? Why does it matter?
Because the perceptual reality of, and this is what you're always talking about, when people come into your office, you are trying to understand from them what their perceptual reality is and what ails them and what may not be functioning in their life. That's the most important thing, right? And so what we have is a pretty big difference between people who feel like the pandemic is over, people who don't. At the same time, we have this polarization in politics, which may not have been, I mean, maybe we're not as polarized as we were right before the Civil War. Probably not, right? Because that was a pretty big deal, the Civil War. But I just think that people in our society right now live in very, very different perceptual realities. And you and I were talking about this before we started the show today. What is a fact? Can we even agree on facts anymore? And how does that affect people when they're coming to our offices and asking for therapy? That's my question.
Well, I would approach answering that by trying to determine uh, our mutual level of reality testing.
Okay.
Uh, Start with the basics. Are we both healthy? Are we
Mm-hmm.
both breathing normally? Are
Mm-hmm.
we both dressed appropriately?
Mm-hmm.
Do we come in with beanies on our head with the little helicopter?
The
Yeah.
propellers. Uh-huh.
Do we hear strange voices talking to us?
Mm-hmm.
So there. I always get asked a question, or almost always get asked the question: Is my family normal?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there is a normal family, except in its abnormality.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have clusters of characteristics that we manifest, and all the data and the research that I read says as a country we're isolating ourselves into congenial clusters. We're moving to communities of
Mm-hmm.
like-minded people
Mm-hmm.
so that the people around us are more similar to us
Mm-hmm.
in their beliefs and their attitudes. And then we are not discomfited by
Yeah.
beliefs and attitudes that make us have alarm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's happening a lot. And in some respects, I think it's really comforting and appropriate. I mean, I'd rather live in a community that's mostly like me
Mm-hmm.
and has some differentiation that I find to be entertaining,
Mm-hmm.
amusing, encouraging, stimulating, because I like those kind of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to be the isolated individual in a radically different community,
Right.
because I wouldn't feel safe.
Right. Right.
So I don't know. And again, you like to think these big global questions. I don't generally give them a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it matters whether or not we say the pandemic is over or don't?
Well, again, I think what matters is what the hell you're talking about. Are you talking about in terms of, all right, so now there's an increasing percentage of people that are buying into the idea that vaccines are some kind of secret government program
Mm-hmm.
to control people and not identifiable solutions to deadly diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're saying, well, society shouldn't mandate the use of vaccines. So when
Mhm.
your kid is 3 years old and goes to school, you shouldn't be able to make me get my kid vaccinated for polio or measles or
Mhm.
mumps. And so my kid goes into class with 30 other kids, and 3 of those other kids have not been vaccinated, and they come
Mhm.
in with measles, mumps, and polio,
Mm-hmm.
any one of which could kill my kid.
Mm-hmm.
But because I belong to a society that says, as a society, we generally blend ourselves to these beliefs
Mhm.
so that we can function and be safe. Now that society is decompensating.
Right.
That concerns me.
Yeah.
So when you say, well, is that the pandemic or is that something else? I don't know, but I know I don't like it.
And that's exactly, I think you've hit on exactly the point that I would like to explore, which is how does this diversity of thought and belief affect individuals in society? And
I'll give you an example. It was in the paper last week in St. Louis, the Post-Dispatch. They had an article about parents who have a child that's significantly disordered emotionally and is violent. He can't control his rage.
mm-hmm.
And he hits other children in the classroom and he hits the
Mhm.
teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the school district said, well, we can't have him in class.
Mm-hmm.
He can't hurt these other kids. He can't hurt the teachers. He's got to learn to control his physical
Mhm.
outrage. And the school district was sued by the parents of this child.
Mm-hmm.
Said, my child under the law has a right,
to be there
in the least restrictive
Mhm.
environment and be in the public school.
Mhm.
I'm sending him to school. Your job is to teach him.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't control his behaviors.
Right.
So what has to happen then to the, quote, 28 other children in the classroom. Well, they just have to be subjected to his violence
Right.
because he has a handicap that's been
Mhm.
identified. And the law says, suck it up, Buttercup. You deal with it. I don't like that. I
Mhm.
don't think it's the right answer.
Mhm.
I don't know what the right answer is,
Mhm.
but to me, what's not being factored in is what happens to the quote normal children
Mhm.
who also are 6 years old
Mhm.
and sitting in class with a violent 6-year-old who just randomly knocks them down or bites them.
Mhm. Mhm.
Or a teacher. The teacher's
Mhm.
trying to correct him and say, Joey, you can't do that. And he bites her or stabs her with a
Mhm.
pencil.
Mhm.
And there's no protection for her.
Right. Right. No, I think that
So
is.
I think there's something dramatically wrong with, is it the court system? Is it the parents of the handicapped child, the identified handicapped child? Is it the systemic approach to understanding emotional and mental disturbance?
Mhm.
I don't know. I just know that I'm truly disturbed by that reality.
Mhm.
So
I agree 100%. I am very, very confused and concerned about exactly that kind of phenomenon happening in society where each individual is being told that they have the right to
to an
have their
attorney.
own reality, right, and that right trumps the rights of everybody else. I tend to believe in the philosophy of a guy named John Locke, which is natural right. And under natural right, what it says is that you have the right to do anything that you want as long as your right to do what you want doesn't impede another person's right to do what they want, right? So you have the right to send your child to school until your child's behavior affects the right of my child to get a good education. And then we have to do something about it. But I don't think that we're doing that anymore. I think that we're defaulting to the right of a single individual. And that's where it comes into this idea of what is a fact. If a fact is just what every individual believes, then there are no facts, there are only opinions. And I'm afraid of what the logical conclusion of this is. And what I think is happening is in our profession is that it is leading to an explosion of anxiety that people are now living with and seeking treatment for.
Explosion of anxiety. Explain to my 7-year-old, son, this is a bullet resistant backpack that you have to wear to school
Mm-hmm.
because some random stranger may
Right.
come and shoot you today.
Exactly.
And this will improve your odds of survival.
Uh-huh.
Why do I have to worry about that, Daddy? Well, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody has guns in America and they have the Second Amendment. They have right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have the right to protect you from them.
Mm-hmm.
We have the right to tell you to protect yourself in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Daddy, can I have a gun? Well, son, you're too young to buy one, but you're not too young to carry one in Missouri.
Right.
So,
And so let's
well, then get me one, Daddy.
go to the
Yeah.
gun shop and
Yeah.
let's get one. I know. And I think
But
that
I mean, I'm being somewhat facetious.
Mhm.
It's a complex set of interlocking issues. How do we find the best path forward for our culture
Mhm.
and for the individuals within the culture?
Right.
Is the challenge.
Right.
And when you're doing therapy with somebody, first question you have to identify, how safe are you?
Mm-hmm.
How disrupted is your life? What are your concerns? What powers do you have to
Yeah.
impact your concerns?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we play the hand?
Mm-hmm.
Can I teach you to play the hand more skillfully? Can I teach you to play it better? Do I know? I may not.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, we might just say, well, it really sucks to be you.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to suck to be you. So can we make it more acceptable to you?
Mm-hmm.
I remember working with a couple that I saw for almost a year, weekly. The wife wanted to get a divorce. She'd had an affair. The husband didn't want a divorce. They had 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So they spent a year trying to figure out whatever they needed to figure out. And the last time I saw them, they come in and sit down. And I said, how's it going this week? And she reaches in her purse and she pulls out papers, hands it to him and said, I'm done. These are divorce papers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out of here. She got up and left the room.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at me. And she was a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
He was an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at me and said, where's the refund window?
Mm-hmm.
Because he'd spent a year
Right.
and money
And
coming to
money.
see me. to, quote, save his marriage. And I tried to explain to him, I never agreed that I could or would save your marriage.
Right.
I agreed to help you facilitate the decision process
Mm-hmm.
and the discussion process.
And to process your emotions about whatever the inevitable outcome was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I said to him, there'll be no refunds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand
He said, well, I'm going
his.
to shoot you then.
Well, I understand where he's coming from. I'm sure
yeah, of
that
course
that
you do.
was a horrible blow, but at the same time, uh, I think that therapy is more about helping individuals emotionally process whatever the inevitable outcome of a situation is that they may not have control over. He didn't have control over what his wife did. And that's hard to accept.
So I approach that a little bit differently
Mhm.
in marriage counseling. What I say to the couple that I'm seeing is my job is to facilitate your ability to be honest with yourself to the point that you can say to me and to your partner, this is who I am.
Mhm.
This is what I want. Knowing that, can you still choose me?
Mhm.
Or do you need me to be somebody else? Do you
Mhm.
need me to be different in ways that I'm not willing to be?
Mhm.
Each of you, ideally, will go through the process to get to that place to say, this is me. As I understand myself and as I'm comfortable with myself, this is what I'm willing to do. Knowing that, do you still choose me?
Mhm.
And can we make this work?
Mhm.
And if at the end of the day, the answer is no, I don't still choose you and we can't make this work, then we've gotten an honest, legitimate,
Mhm.
healthy answer.
Mhm.
If the answer is, I don't know forever, but for now, I can work with that. And we'll keep checking it out over time.
Mhm.
So for now, we're good.
So if a client comes to the office and says, I am super anxious, and for the sake of full disclosure, we're doing this a week before the inauguration of a new president in 2025, and people might come to the office and say, I'm just desperately anxious over what I see as the division politically, socially, in our society. I don't know how to live with that, how to resolve that. That's obviously bigger than any of us have control over. What do you say to that client?
I'll say, oh, you're really neurotypical.
Yeah, because any neurotypical person would be anxious
Would be
about
anxious, well, because we live in a chaotic environment that all evidence seems to indicate will continue to be chaotic.
Right.
So it is not unreasonable, it's not irrational, it's not unnormal to be anxious.
Mm-hmm.
The questions then become, how do you live through the next weeks and months
Yeah,
without having it cause you so much distress that you're dysfunctional?
I know. And I think that you hit on an answer that a lot of people are finding. And I heard a similar report last week on the radio that people are beginning to cluster in communities of like-minded
And
individuals.
another
So,
answer that you will hear in the AA communities, one day at a time, cowboy.
mm-hmm.
Get through today. Tomorrow
Yeah.
will take care of itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So there isn't an answer. Normal doesn't exist.
right.
We have opinions. So what?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, how do you get through today? Can you make it better than it was yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Can you make it less bad than it looks like it's going to be tomorrow?
And can you find ways of being able to manage your own anxiety and emotional discomfort with the ambiguity that exists in that reality?
And in a family setting, can you impact the anxieties of your children
Mm-hmm.
or your spouse in positive and productive ways, helpful ways?
Mm-hmm.
Or just go home and say to your kids, well, yeah, you ought to be terrified.
Right.
It's a terrifying world.
Right. Right. I can't even imagine having to have a conversation with the child.
Well, any
My
number
kids
of
are
people,
grown.
again, in America, clustering,
Mm-hmm.
are homeschooling
Mm-hmm.
because they said, I'm not sending my kid into that environment.
Right.
So I'll educate him at home.
Mm-hmm.
And they have that right.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of them, it's an excellent solution.
Mhm.
They really do a good job. For others, not so much so.
Right. Yeah. Scary.
Yeah.
It's all scary.
All right.
So we don't have any conclusions. We don't have any sagely advice. We don't have any
And
epiphanies.
that's what we just did.
But what we would say to people is there's no question there's a lot of ambiguity in society. There's no question that that is causing a lot of individuals anxiety. We certainly appreciate people listening to the show, and we hope that that gives them some modicum of relief and possibly even understanding, but it is not a substitute for real in-person psychotherapy. So if you are having,
On the road to neurotypicality,
yes,
it's just another milestone.
it's just another milestone. But if you are having anxiety over that ambiguity, please, please, please either reach out to us. We will try and help you find resources in your area, or find a person that you can go and sit with and talk about these things, because it actually can help and make a difference. If you have any questions or anything that you would like us to talk about, you can get us at the email psychwithmike.com, or you can go on YouTube and leave us a comment under one of the shows. But no matter what, please go to YouTube and subscribe, because that really helps the show out.
If you're really anxious about your ability to survive in the current stock market, send us your money and we'll worry about it for you.
We will invest it wisely.
Well, we'll worry about it for you. So
As
you
always.
won't have to. Yeah.
And as always, the music that appears in psychwithmike.com, I can't even talk now. As always, the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue, and if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike and Brett.
Do not fix that. Put that out there.
I'm not going to fix it. I'm not going to fix any of it.
All right.